Scotland's summer squad heading to the Americas, folks, has been announced. There's a few big names missing from the squad. It's very much an experimental one from Gregor Townsend. We'll go through the squad, kind of some of the ins and outs, particularly the ins, I suppose. And you guys can let us know your thoughts. Fixtures list: 2 in North America, 2 in South America, taking on Canada and the US in kind of early mid-July. Reminiscent of that tour they had, I think, back in 2018, where they also played Canada. From memory, they hammered them with some maul tries, and then they played the States, where they lost by a point, but it was very much a young Scotland side back in those days, and then they went on to play Argentina. In this case, they're not going to play Argentina. After they play those kind of summer games up in North America, it's down to play World Cup teams in Chile, who are certainly one of the more entertaining teams in World Rugby with the way they chuck the ball about, and then Uruguay in kind of late July. So 4 tests on the cards for Scotland. A good chance to see, I don't know, see some of these uncapped guys and how they go, you know, in Scotland colours. A bunch of the big guys who aren't in the squad. I mean, the likes of Finn Russell, Ben White, Ali Price, Cam Redpath, Blair Kinghorn. All these backs aren't named. Jack Dempsey, Xander Fagerson, Richie Gray, Sam Skinner, Andy Christie. There's a bunch of guys who have been essentially rested. There's some guys who have been kind of omitted and some guys who've retired. But yeah, it's very much a kind of semi-familiar Scotland squad with the amount of guys that are out. In terms of the guys who are in, kind of 3.5 or maybe 4 hookers in the squad. Ewan Ashman is the kind of most familiar name. He's the only guy with more than 1 cap to his name that's going to play hooker. Then you got Patrick Harrison, Robbie Smith, and Dylan Richardson. Dylan Richardson, the last time he played for Scotland, which was a few years ago now, he played 10 minutes against Japan, was as a loose forward, but they've essentially called him into the squad as a hooker, because remember, he plays hooker and loose forward for the Sharks down in South Africa. He is going to cover more hooker than flanker on this tour, apparently. I thought potentially his days in Scottish colours were done after his single cap, but no, he is back in the squad. And then you got the other 2 guys, you know, one playing for Edinburgh. I think he's had 3 games towards the end of the year, and then one guy playing for Northampton, and Robbie Smith. He's been mainly the bench guy this year for Northampton, but yeah, 21 and 25, and then Richardson 25. Plus Ewan Ashman, who's 24. It's certainly a pretty young collection of hookers, but just really low on caps. Props-wise, you got Hurd, Sebastian, Miller Mills covering tight head, plus Murphy Walker, who I guess he can cover both, but he's certainly more in the tight head column these days. And then Nathan McBeth, Rory Sutherland, and Pierre Skuman as your loose head. So again, pretty light on caps. You got Will Hurd as your uncapped guy, former Scotland under-20s playing for Leicester. You got Nathan McBeth, who's been playing for Glasgow, former Lions man, so South African connection there. And then, you know, Murphy Walker has had multiple injuries, keeping his game time really limited in recent years, but he is back, so that's a bit of good news. And then, like, Rory Sutherland, who has kind of had a dramatic fall from grace in terms of being a British and Irish Lion, to kind of where he is now playing mainly as the bench guy for Onaya in the top 14. So, yeah, it's kind of an interesting mix, put it that way. I mean, Sebastian at tight head and Pierre Skuman at loose head are the kind of most experienced guys in that bunch. Locks, there's also a bunch of youngsters. You got Craig, Cummings, Johnson, Young, and Williamson. Uncapped guys, and Max Williamson, who's only 22 years old, but he's already over 2 meters tall, so that's, you know, encouraging. It's always nice to have a bit of tall timber in the second row. And then Ewan Johnson, who's also over there playing in France, also a kind of former Scotland under-20s man, also a bit of a big unit. Then the other guys, you know, Scott Cummings is certainly the most experienced. He's the only guy who's in kind of double-digit caps. Loose forwards, Bayliss, Brown, Crosby, Darge, Fagerson, and Ritchie. So less experimental there. You know, you got some pretty experienced campaigners with Fagerson, Darge, and Ritchie. And Crosby's kind of nearing in on 10 caps himself. And then Gregor Brown is the only uncapped guy of the bunch, the Glasgow Warrior. So only 22 years old. Also another guy who has a bit of potential. So the main guy that seems like is a potential omission there is Johnny Matthews. Because hasn't he been playing the house down in the URC? Certainly gets a lot of tries. So his omission is kind of an interesting one. Obviously, Vipia now has kind of since retired. George Turner, I think he might be done in Scotland colours, right? So yeah, you guys have gone from having like 3 or 4 like really experienced veteran hookers to 3 guys who are virtually uncapped at hooker and Ewan Ashman. So it's an interesting mix. Backs wise, Dobie, Horn, and Gus War. So Gus War is the uncapped guy, but he's been certainly getting a lot of game time for Sale Sharks this year. George Horn the most experienced, and then Dobie will add to his couple of caps that he's had a couple of years ago. 3 fly halves with Hastings, Healy, and Thompson. That's really kind of a fascinating one to see which direction Gregor Townsend goes. Does he give each of them a go? Because they've all had a taste. Adam Hastings obviously missed out with injuries at times, but he is 27. Ben Healy's been playing the house down for Edinburgh. Big boot of his, so maybe he gets the nod, and it's good to see Ross Thompson back. Midfield is a little bit more stable with Jones, Tuipulotu, McDowell, and then Matt Curry kind of being the uncapped guy, who's a bit of a utility guy at this point. I think Gregor said he mainly sees him as an outside centre, but he's also been covering the wing this year as well. And then outside backs with Reed, Rose, Stain, Van der Merwe, and Patterson. Patterson, remember, got that 1 cap in the Six Nations as kind of a last-minute call-up and played really well. So that's obviously really encouraging. And then Gregor Townsend really talked up Aaron Reed's just kind of pure speed that he can add to the game. So I think he'll probably get capped. Remember, he was in the Six Nations squad from memory, but didn't manage to get himself a game. So, yeah, there's a lot of guys out. I mean, it might have been nice to see Redpath add to his caps because he's relatively low caps in terms of Scotland. He's had injury disruptions. But, yeah, they've gone with the kind of more familiar Jones and Tuipulotu. I kind of hope Gregor mixes it up a bit because we've seen Jones and Tuipulotu play together a lot, so we kind of already know about that combination. And if the kind of point of the squad is to mix things up, I hope he just does just that and actually try and find a new few kind of combinations and genuinely give some guys a crack. Average age of the forwards is around 26, likewise the backs, so still pretty young. Average caps though, like the forwards is 12 caps and the backs just under 14 caps average, so really, really inexperienced squad. But like back in 2018, it was the same deal, and you often see some of the kind of European squads send teams which are a mix of youth and experience, so that's exactly what Gregor Townsend has done here. And it's a good chance for some of those guys who've been playing a lot of rugby, the guys kind of 30 plus or around about that 30 mark, to have a full summer off and, you know, recuperate, get their bodies back in order with an eye on some kind of tests down the road. So, yeah, we'll see how things go. It's going to be a really exciting few games because sides like Canada, the US, Uruguay, and Chile will really be up for, and Gregor Townsend mentioned this when he was kind of interviewed about it, you know, they'll be up for trying to claim this kind of tier 1 scalp. So, yeah, it should be really, really interesting. You guys let us know your thoughts on the squad. If you want to see me and Tony from Distracted Sports chatting a bit of URC and some Premiership and some Super Rugby, check out 2 Cents Gets Distracted. That's the podcast. Also available on podcasting platforms that we do. The latest episode is up there. But, yeah, you guys let us know your thoughts. I would say expectations has to be 4 from 4 for the Scots. Anything else will be seen as a bit disappointing. But ultimately, the main expectation is to build a bit of depth. So even if they were to drop a result with a really experimental side, I don't think it would be the end of the world. But anyway, you guys let us know your thoughts, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.